All right. Good morning, everybody. Joel here with Rev, kicking off our monthly webinar for May. As a few more people continue to trickle in here, we'll go ahead and get started here in just a few minutes. But wanted to first say thank you to everybody that registered for our topic today, which is best practices and common pitfalls and ADAS calibrations. As we've been kind of going through these webinars on a month-to-month basis, we've been kind of building up to a certain spot where obviously we're continuing to learn more about ADAS and calibrations, and obviously trying to work together in terms of being able to overcome a lot of the pitfalls and issues and things that we're seeing. So hopefully you guys are seeing benefit in these webinars. We love the feedback. We love the participation. And again, we'll go ahead and get started here. Couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you can, any questions, comments, feel free to use the chat button in your control panel. You can go ahead and ask any questions in there. Anything that we can answer during the presentation, we'll certainly do so. If not, we can always respond back after the presentation's done. A little bit different today too. We're going to be asking a couple of poll questions. So as we come up to certain slides, we'll be asking a poll for input from the group here in terms of their answers, and we'll review some of that information. And as always, we'll be sending a recording out of the presentation once we're done, along with some additional documents that we're going to be sharing today as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And again, I wanted to just say thanks for everybody that's taken some time out of their day to join us. So, all right, a little bit about myself. As most of you probably know who I am at this point. If not, I'm the Director of Partnerships for Rev and Rev ADAS as it's known. I've spent the better part of the last 15 years connected to the collision repair industry and the ADAS side now for the last 5 years. I am by no means, as I claim, to be an expert in anything ADAS. I just have a little bit of knowledge that I like to share, and like to be a utility and a resource for folks to help further their level of education and understanding as far as how to fix cars correctly and make sure we're putting vehicles back on the road that are safe. I've been with Rev for about a year. Prior to Rev, I did work for a sublet ADAS programming and diagnostic vendor called Precision Diagnostics for the previous 3 years. And before that, I've worked in various roles within the collision repair industry. So to get connected to our webinar series, we did launch our ADAS Empowered community back at the end of 2024. We've got close to, I think, 1,000 members now. So thank you for everybody that's joined, for everybody that asks questions and engages and collaborates. We love seeing the input. We love seeing the sort of that community focus of folks helping each other out when questions come in on certain topics within the industry that are of interest, or folks that are working on a vehicle and asking for questions and looking for some additional help and support. So we did launch a podcast as well. We've recorded our first two podcasts last week, and we'll be launching those live on different podcast mediums between Apple and Spotify and Amazon Music. So be watching for those. And again, feel free to share the community with anybody that you know or any of your teams. It's a great place to hang out. We know there's a lot of social platforms out there where folks are looking for information, whether it's ADAS related or repair industry related. Love those channels and those social platforms, but we're trying to get everybody together in kind of one spot. And again, continuing to build sort of that fellowship and positive momentum as we continue to learn together, as I like to say. All right, today's agenda, again, kind of flipping back to our topic. We're going to talk about really the basics. I know a lot of us know a lot of the information as far as like what ADAS is and how did we get here, but I like to make sure that we just kind of level set and make sure we're all in the same terms of information on, what exactly is ADAS and how did we get here. The importance of proper ADAS calibrations. I think that goes without saying that this is really critical mass at this particular point, what we're seeing in terms of volume, vehicle sophistication, the technology is continuing to advance, and it's becoming even more prevalent that not only doing ADAS calibrations is important, but obviously following proper procedures. So we'll talk about that. Best practices for accurate ADAS calibrations, and some of the common pitfalls and ways to avoid them. And then we'll try to get through everything in the next 45 minutes and then save some time for some Q&A at the end, along with some additional information about upcoming webinars we've got and some events that are going on. And then like I mentioned too, we'll have a couple of polls throughout the presentation today. We'll get some audience participation. So all right, so really quick, like I mentioned, I know a lot of us have got a lot of experience, a lot of folks that have been on these presentations before and webinars. It goes without saying that I think we've got to remain uh, from allowing ourselves to get complacent with really understanding what ADAS is. But again, just to refresh, obviously what ADAS is, it's really technology to help design to improve vehicle safety, right? It's potentially having the vehicle take over from a moment that helps us avoid an accident, helps us from crossing over into different traffic, helps us avoid from hitting a pedestrian or what have you. There are different levels of ADAS, really from level 0 to level 5 being, as we think about like fully autonomous vehicles, and sort of like where we're at right now. So, depending on who you are, and I think a lot of us can agree that we're really kind of in between that level 2 and level 3, where we've got some partial automation and getting into where we've got some like conditional automation in terms of think of like specific vehicles with Ford Super Cruise or Ford Blue Cruise and GM Super Cruise or Tesla Autopilot, Copilot. As we've talked about in previous webinars, the trend is moving towards fully autonomous vehicles, combining sensor fusion with machine learning, with these complex algorithms, mountains of data, vehicle to vehicle communication, a vehicle to everything communication, and so forth. So we're really get these 0, 1, 2, and 3 are the building blocks, as I like to say, to getting into that fully autonomous environment, which again, depending on who you talk to, may happen in the next 5 to 10 years and maybe 20 or 30 years down the road as well. Nobody's exactly sure as far as when that's going to happen. So if anybody has any input or information, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'd love to talk about that. So going back to the 70s, 80s, really the advent of ABS brakes, I think, was really sort of the foundation of when ADAS started, to getting into the 90s, 2000s, and then the last 10, 15 years is where we've really seen the increase in terms of vehicle technology, sophistication of sensor fusions, integration of AI, machine learning, and like I said, the vehicle to everything communication. So as it will continue to progress, it's always good, I think, to really have that formidable foundation of understanding of exactly what ADAS is, how all of these things work together, and ultimately what we're trying to do in terms of promote vehicle safety so that we can make sure we're putting not only ourselves, but our family members, our friends back in cars that are safe, and that, really we're providing a safer environment for everybody that's out on the streets. Why it matters, it's only going to continue to increase. You look at this graph going from left to right. The market penetration from 2 years ago, from 2023 to 2033, you can see it's a substantial increase in just in terms of dollar amounts, in terms of the market capitalization here. So safety first, path to autonomy. So like I said, we're seeing these level 2, level 3, really those stepping stones as we get into level 5 fully autonomous vehicles. And consumer expectations, I know we've talked about this on previous webinars as well, is that consumer demand has never been higher as they purchase new vehicles, that they are looking for ADAS technology. They don't know it by name. They just know that they like their adaptive cruise controls. They like their blind spots. They like the forward-facing cameras that help them keep them in their lanes. It's a matter of time before they start to really ask questions, which it's going to take a while, obviously, but there is that foundation there of where consumer expectations are continuing to increase on as they buy vehicles, making sure they're safe. All right, so let's get into our topic for today. Sort of the first subset we want to talk about is the importance of proper ADAS calibrations. Again, I think it goes without saying, why proper ADAS calibrations are important. A couple of quick, easy bullet points to kind of digest here. First and foremost is safety of drivers, safety of passengers, and obviously safety of pedestrians. There are liability and legal risks that we need to keep in the back of our minds, obviously, as we fix cars, that there is a proper way and there is improper ways of doing calibrations. And there's also obviously not doing any calibrations at all because of whether we just don't know or we choose not to do the calibrations because there's no lights on, no codes, what have you. Um, there are obviously always mounting liability and legal risks. OEM compliance and proper repair procedures. If you are an OEM certified shop and you need to maintain compliance through audit and making sure that all of your files and everything checks a lot of boxes, obviously, proper ADAS calibrations is certainly part of that. Repair accuracy and integrity. Again, we want to put safe cars back on the road. Proper ADAS calibrations are paramount to that. And the evolving vehicle complexity. As we continue to see the advent of new technologies, new radars, new lidars, new cameras, new sensors, uh, what have you, again, providing that proper foundation for proper ADAS calibrations are going to be very, very important. If you're not following proper calibration procedures now, I highly suggest you do so. If you don't know where to go, feel free to reach out to the community or to myself, and I'm happy to help provide some resources where we can give you that proper information on where to go and sort of what not to do as we kind of get into this presentation as well. All right, so what are some common risks of improper ADAS calibrations? So first could be inaccurate object detection. So we can, by performing an improper ADAS calibrations, and improper may be that the environment we're doing the calibration in may not be necessarily conducive to doing the environment, the calibration. If we're having to manually manipulate where our target is, if we're following OEM specs as far as the distance and height of where that calibration target is, but to get the calibration to complete, we're having to manipulate those measurements. That can certainly create an improper ADAS calibration. So inaccurate object detection can create false positives or misjudge the location and distance of other vehicles or other objects. Failure of collision avoidance. If this is off or improperly aligned, the vehicle may not brake in time or at all. Other common risks could be blind spot, cross traffic errors, compromised adaptive cruise, and lane departure or steering issues. So all of these are specifically designed to promote safety, right? So if the calibrations are done improperly, and again, referencing either improper environment or manipulation of targets or stands, or not following OEM procedures as far as the calibrations go, any one of these things could certainly be affected, which could ultimately lead to something a bit more tragic in terms of an accident or something far more worse. So I like to point these out because these are things that I continuously see across different social channels, conversations that I'm a part of, events that I go to. It's a continuous narrative of it's great that people are at least now looking at doing calibrations, but are they doing them properly? So something that we'll come back to here in a little bit as well. All right, so our first knowledge check and poll of questions. So we've got two separate questions here. First one is, I got to move this screen here really quick. Improper calibrations may void OEM warranty or trigger insurance claim denials. True or false? We'll go ahead and give everybody just a second here to answer this poll question, then we'll move on to the second one. All right, and then second question. True or false? Liability on the shop or sublet if the vehicle is involved in an accident due to improper or missed calibration. True or false? So if you answered true to both of these, kudos to you. Um, Certainly improper calibrations may certainly void a OEM warranty or certainly could trigger insurance claim denials. And secondly, on this, it is true that liability on could be on the shop or the sublet if the vehicle is involved in an accident due to improper or miscalibrations or not calibrating at all. I will revert back to our admin here in just a second to see if we can share poll results, but in the meantime, we'll go ahead and we'll push on with the rest of the presentation here. All right, so again, as it's been talked about before in other presentations, and again from what you may have heard independently in different conversations, we talk about like why 1 degree matters in a radar alignment. And I thought it would be prudent to at least break this down a little bit and provide some examples. So at 300 feet, which is about 91 meters, which is a common range for front radar to look out in front of the vehicle, a 1 degree misalignment shifts the radar beam to about 5.2 feet to the side. So if we're looking down the lane that we're in, and that forward-facing radar is off just by 1 degree, at 300 feet out in front of the vehicle, that's looking at a little over 5 feet to the side, which certainly is now over the curb, could pick up an object, it could pick up a pedestrian, a fire hydrant, what have you. And depending on what that radar is triggered to do, and let's just say it's for adaptive cruise control or automatic emergency braking, could certainly engage it if it's picking up that object. And if something is traveling behind that car at a high rate of speed, um, could be something that could be catastrophic or very tragic, to say the least. Um, so what does that mean as far as that 1 degree being off? That means your radar could be tracking a vehicle in the next lane over, or a missed stopped vehicle directly ahead, or again, another object on the side of the road. So looking at this in a little bit more detail, we use a diagram here. You can see that 1 degree at 60 feet is about 1 foot of deviation. At 120 feet, it's 2 feet of deviation. And again, at 300 feet, like we talked about in the previous slide, it's looking at about 5 feet of deviation. So the question is, it's not a big deal, right? If you're walking, uh, not necessarily, but if you're driving a vehicle going 60 feet, traveling at 30 miles per hour in 1 second. So something can happen rapidly, pretty quickly. And if you're again, that radar being 1 degree off at 300 feet, it's looking at something 5 feet on the side of the road. So again, checking that horizontal alignment, vertical alignment, very, very important. We're going to talk a little bit about doing some different pre-checks. We're going to create a document for everybody to have that we're going to share. That's going to talk about different things to think about before you do your calibrations and doing pre-alignment checks, pre-radar checks, and different things as well that we'll get into. But I wanted to just share this, and hopefully this resonates, that these are things that you are looking at and can certainly understand in terms of how it's just readily important to make sure that everything is within OEM spec and that we're not seeing any deviation in terms of these radar alignments or cameras or sensors or things like that. All right, so for successful calibrations, we put together a little bit different type of list of what not to do. First and foremost is skipping on pre-calibration inspections. Don't do that, right? So let's check for misaligned suspension. Let's check for frame damage. Let's check that we've got proper tire pressure, or aftermarket parts that may be affecting sensor alignment. Let's make sure we're checking on those things and not skipping a pre-calibration inspection. Certainly don't ignore OEM procedures. I think as a lot of us have come to realize that calibrations are not one size fits all. Each OEM has specific setup and target placement environment requirements. Let's make sure we're reviewing that information before we go in and do our calibration. Don't rely solely on aftermarket tool feedback. As great as some of the scan and diagnostic tools may be, their report for calibration complete, or they may report calibrations being complete, even if the setup was wrong or the vehicle conditions were missed. So make sure you're validating that OEM documentation. Make sure you're doing your test drives to verify that the whatever you're calibrating is working correctly, and incorporate some sort of quality control process that helps, again, validate and substantiate that everything's working correctly and that you're making sure you're putting that customer back in a safe car. Improper environment. Uh, Make sure we're doing calibrations indoors. Make sure we've got proper lighting. Make sure we've got a level surface. Make sure we're not manually manipulating any of the OEM target specifications in terms of distance and placement. Follow proper procedures every single time. If you're asked to do a calibration outdoors due to shop not having enough space, I think it's okay to say, like, look, we're going to make sure we're going to do this correctly. We don't have the proper space or environment to do that in this shop. So let's make sure we can get the vehicle back to a location that's conducive to doing a proper calibration. Or if that's not an option, offering up obviously the opportunity to take that car to a dealership, which again generally is going to be a better result or better scenario versus trying to manipulate or manually enhance the environment that we're completing that calibration. Because as we saw in the previous slides talking about improper calibrations, there's too much at stake to be trying to do stuff that's not correct. And last thing here on what not to do is don't skip a post-calibration test drive. This is something that, again, at my old company, Precision Diagnostics, anytime we did a calibration, whether it be a static or dynamic, we always did what we called a road test verification, where we went out and we performed the ADAS functionality, whether it was adaptive cruise or lane keep assist, what have you, and make sure that before we deliver that vehicle back to our customer, that that stuff was working correctly. So again, not an all-encompassing list here, but just some ideas on things not to do or not to skip so that we can focus on getting a successful calibration. All right, so best practices for accurate ADAS calibrations. I think we've got another knowledge check here. So, question to the audience here. It's multiple choice. Pick the best answer. So, what's the most overlooked step in ADAS calibrations, and where do shops really cut corners? Is it A, skipping OEM procedures? Is it, all right, B, rushing through calibrations in poor lighting or uneven conditions or non-conducive environment? C, is it assuming sensors are aligned because nothing looks off? Again, no lights, no codes, make sure everything is correct. Or D, not testing ADAS features post-repair. Who has time for that? I'll give you guys just a second to go ahead and put your answer in. All right. So the correct answer is all the above. If you answered all the above or checked all of the boxes, again, kudos to you. Really, again, I think a lot of these are tie into really what's the most overlooked step in ADAS in terms of all of these things. Shops are skipping OEM procedures. They are rushing through calibrations, not doing their pre-inspections. They are assuming sensors are aligned, and they're not necessarily testing ADAS features post-repair because they're concerned about not having enough time to do those things. So, all right. So, what are some ideas or ways of making sure we've got the quote unquote checklist here for making sure we're getting accurate ADAS calibration? So, again, not an all-encompassing list, and I think a lot of these tie back into like what not to do, but I want to review these a little bit in detail as we go through these next slides here. But pre-calibration vehicle inspections, again, we created a document that we'd like to share with everybody. We're going to go ahead and we'll share that with the video link after the webinar is done, so you'll have access to that. We think that's something that could be of value. Following OEM procedures, I think that what goes without saying. Making sure we're doing calibrations in appropriate environment. making sure our equipment and maintenance are up to snuff in terms of subscriptions, ongoing staff training and learning, and proper documentation and billing best practices. All right, so for our pre-calibration inspections, so really where do we start or where do we begin? So again, this is not necessarily an all-encompassing list. We will, like I said, share the document that we created after the webinar here, but really what we would encourage you to do and look at before you do your calibration is investigate suspension and ride height, check tire size and pressure, look at or validate and verify wheel alignment and thrust angle, and check any sensor mounting and the conditions. So, why is it important to look at ride height and suspension? So any modifications or damage to suspensions could certainly, throw up an improper calibration, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And why is that? Well, radars, cameras, sensors rely on precise angles and distances. Any slight variation can alter ride height, affecting sensor position. Tire size and tire pressure, again, refer to OEM specs on this as far as like, why is that important? But again, if you're trying to calibrate a vehicle with oversized tires or underinflated tires, again, because the OEMs use that precise angles and precise information as far as like the setups go, it's important to verify you've got A, proper tire size, and obviously B, proper tire inflation. For wheel alignments and thrust angle verification, we want to make sure we've got that center line that's true. Many OEMs require an alignment check prior to calibration. I think last time I looked, there were like 12 or 14 OEMs that do require an alignment prior to doing a calibration. If you aren't sure of who they are, let me know. I've got that list and I'm happy to share that out with everybody. And then for sensor mounting and conditions, make sure the sensors are clean, make sure they're undamaged, make sure they're securely mounted, make sure they're facing the correct direction. Can't tell me how many times we've seen a sensor that was RNI'd, was taken off and then put back on the car, but it was facing the wrong direction or it was turned around. Some other things to look at in terms of inspecting pre-calibration, look at a windshield for, make sure there's no cracks, make sure there's no glare, make sure it's clean, make sure for any radars that are placed behind a bumper or a grill, you got proper bumper and grill fitment. Also inspect any vehicle load or cargo. Is the trunk full of stuff, or is the back seat full of stuff that may be weighing the vehicle down? Or if you're calibrating a truck and it's got loaded with tools or equipment in the back of it, can certainly change the ride height. And then make sure you're doing any kind of inspection on electronic systems health as well. So again, I'm going to pull this document up that we created. Like I said, we'll go ahead and share this. We're gonna modify it a little bit to make it look a little bit nicer. But again, not an all-encompassing list, but just some things to think about as you going to do a calibrations. Again, I think a lot of you are already probably doing a lot of these things already, but we want to just make sure that for those of you that are relatively new to the ADAS industry, that you've got a starting point of where to go before you're doing calibrations. So again, some continued best practices. Again, following OEM procedures should be your North Star. As we put on here, it's OEM or nothing. That should be your mindset. Environmental requirements for static calibrations. Again, level floor, surface, proper lighting. Always do them indoors. Make sure you've got proper amount of fuel in the fuel tank. Check OEM information for that. And when in doubt, always revert back to OE procedures and requirements. Equipment maintenance and accuracy. Is your software updated? Do you have the most recent version? Are your calibration target, are they in good condition? Have they been worn out? Have they been damaged? Has some of the grid pattern worn off? For staff training and ongoing learning and certification, are you continuing to provide resources and information to your staff if you're doing in-house calibrations? Or if you're a sublet vendor, are you continuing to have them go to different industry associations or different certification classes in terms of keeping up with their knowledge base as the technology continues to evolve. And then for documentation and billing best practices, as we like to say here at Rev, document everything. There's been a lot of conversation around the continued influence of the insurance companies that's going to continue to proliferate itself. The more you can document, the more you can validate why you're doing what you're doing, the easier it is, I think, in terms of reimbursement. Record your steps, take pictures of your setup, take pictures of your scans, anything you can to help validate that you're actually doing the calibrations, calibration reports, your setup, accuracy of invoicing and things like that. Anything that's going to continue to like help sort of circumvent that pushback from what we're seeing and from the insurance companies will certainly help. And as vehicle owners are becoming more astute in terms of calibrations being done, we're starting to see more general repair and mechanical repair shops starting to get in to do ADAS calibrations. Their clientele being the vehicle owners, it's really important for them to be able to provide that documentation to their clients to validate and justify why certain calibrations need to be done. So again, overarching theme here for best practices, continue to document, make sure you're continuing to provide training for your staff. Even if you're not doing calibrations in-house, I think it's important to continue to, be involved in webinars and things like this, be involved in the community, be involved with sort of the continuing education opportunities that exist out there with just having the basics of like how important ADAS actually is and where we're going to continue to see it to go. So, all right, so let's talk about some common pitfalls to avoid. Just again, not an all-encompassing list, but just some things to focus on here. And again, based on the feedback that I've received from different conferences that I've talked to or people that I've talked to in general over the last couple of years, uh, feel free to add to this list if you'd like to. I'd love to see what other people have as far as what other pitfalls to avoid. But number one is not validating existing diagnostic trouble codes, reliance on aftermarket equipment or repair information. Again, the aftermarket equipment industry is massive. They do a tremendous job of validating as much information as possible, but there may be times where they have limitations on what they can provide in terms of repair information. So again, I would reference back or refer back to going back to the OEM information to overarchingly validate why something needs to be done. Improper use of or alignment of calibration targets. Again, no manipulating of the static calibration targets just to get the calibration to complete or to be successful. Lack of technician training and understanding. I think right now is a really good time if your shop's a little bit slower, whether it's training on ADAS or new procedures on collision repair training or things like that. It's going to get busy again. We're going to see, a ramp up of volume at some point. I've been around this industry long enough to know that, the volume can be cyclical, and right now it is a little bit slow, but I think we're going to see things continue to improve as we go over the course of the summer. Skipping or improvising steps due to time or cost pressures, and assuming calibration is not needed after small repairs. Small repairs being we're just R&Ing this bumper, it's just cosmetic, we're just replacing a windshield, or we're just, replacing 4 tires and doing an alignment. You'd be very shocked at the number of vehicles that require calibration after some of these small repairs. And again, if you're not sure, using a utility like Rev can be a great way to understand what needs to be done, and then obviously validating through OEM information as well. So again, not an all-encompassing list here, but just some ideas on some things to do in terms of like avoiding some of these pitfalls that we see on a more common basis. Again, going into a little bit more here in terms of some of those other pitfalls in a little bit more detail. So improper sensor alignment, failure to follow OEM procedures, inadequate environmental conditions, and overlooking post-repair inspections. Again, without going through all of these line by line, I think with improper sensor alignment, as we talked about, that 1 degree deviation can be very detrimental. So make sure cameras, LiDAR, and radars are precisely aligned. Use OEM approved calibration tools. Regularly inspect and maintain alignment equipment. Again, following OEM procedures, I think that goes without saying. That should always be our North Star in all of this stuff. Inadequate environment conditions. If you're asked to perform a calibration in an inadequate environment, again, I think the default answer should be just no. We can try to help facilitate this in a proper environment, getting it indoors, getting it into a space that's conducive to doing those calibrations with considerations to level floor, proper lighting, enough space, and then overlooking post-repair inspections. Again, if you're going to do a calibration, take the vehicle out, take it for a test drive. Your customers will appreciate that. That way you can verify and test that everything's working correctly. And again, just some basics of things to think about in terms of avoiding some of these pitfalls that we see. All right. So shifting gears a little bit, and this is going to kind of reflect into our next webinar in June, which is talking about shop efficiencies through different workflow integrations. If somebody would like access to this particular slide, we'll be happy to share this after we get off the webinar. Just let me know. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation, so anybody can reach out to me and ask any questions or ask for a copy of the deck. But what this really is really a step-by-step, and we'll get into more of this detail as we get into our webinar for June. But really step one, integrate ADAS tools with existing software. So whether you're using CCC or Mitchell or Autotex, there's a lot of different tools and utilities that you can integrate into software in terms of helping understand when calibrations need to be done. So anymore, I like to say there's really no excuse for not knowing when a calibration needs to be performed, or at least having utility and information of understanding, like based on the repairs we're doing today, we should be looking at doing these calibrations because this platform is telling us to do so. Second step is automated ADAS repair and calibration scheduling. Third step is centralizing your data management. So storing specific ADAS data in a central database can be readily available for future use, can be of a huge help. Real-time updates and communications, automate your customer notifications, optimize technician workflows, so making it really efficient for your technicians of knowing when specific calibrations need to be done and why, and continuous workflow evaluation. So again, we'll kind of go through these in more detail, but I want to kind of give everybody a little bit of a snippet of what we'll talk about next month and getting into more details, because this is something that we get a lot of feedback here at Rev is, hey, we've launched this calibration company, or we're launching a separate group to do this for us internally. What are some things that we should be thinking about in terms of enhancing our shop efficiency and sort of our workflow? And there's a lot of underlying pieces here with this as well, but we'll go through those next month as well. So, all right. So we got through that a little bit quicker than I had originally planned, which is great. Give some people some time back here. I did see a few questions come through the chat, so I'm going to go through those really quickly here. And give me 1 second while I kind of comb back through these. Let's see. See a lot of people looking for that checklist. We'll definitely share that out with you all. Let's see if we've got any questions in here. Kiara, I don't know if you want to go ahead and put those questions in that we put in preemptively before the webinar started, but if not, we can jump to, here we go. All right, so first question, again, we kind of put these together to help kind of encourage for engagement here. So feel free to write in your answer into the chat. But first question is, why is it important to verify tire size and pressure before calibrating ADAS systems? Second question, and again, these are in the chat. If the calibration tool gives a complete message, does that guarantee the system is properly calibrated? And let's see. Another question that just came in from Drew. As a company that uses Rev to help identify calibration requirements, what can we do about insurance companies like State Farm who are requiring collision centers to use companies like ADAS maps only? Tremendous question, Drew. That's something that we hear pretty much on a daily basis. In our uh, I guess review of this situation in our research is maybe the better way to put it. Um, we've had some conversations with some insurance companies just in terms of like, what exactly Rev is and what it can do. And we want to make sure that we're providing fluid transparency to anybody who may have access to a Rev report so they understand exactly what's included with it. With this particular uh, situation between State Farm and the requirement for using ADAS maps, um, I think the big thing is following the pricing guidelines from State Farm in terms of like what they're willing to pay for certain calibrations. Uh, the folks from Opus and ADAS Map and having some conversations directly with them, uh, they understand that there may be some gaps in some of the coverage they have for knowing which calibrations need to be done for certain OEMs. Again, I think it's a great tool. They've got a lot of coverage, similar to like what Rev has, but there may be some gaps in there. So certainly you can use Rev. I don't think there's any necessarily specific requirement or nothing that we can find that specifically says you have to use one scrubbing tool over another. Um, and again, I know there's been a lot of conversation on this. I don't have like 100% explicitity in terms of like all of the information, but if you want to have a conversation with that outside of the webinar, feel free to reach out to me. And I know there's been a few questions in the community as well on this topic. It's certainly a hot topic, and one we'll keep an eye on as well. Let's see if we've got any other questions in here. So Jason put in, we've been doing dual calibrations on some required windshield replacements. We are slowly doing dual calibrations on body shop work too, but getting some pushback. Uh, Examples are when a radar that works with a lane change, we calibrate both. Is anyone else doing this? Any thoughts or any input? If anybody has any insight on that, that would be tremendous to help Jason out. Gary answered question number one on ride height. Ride height and where did that go? And vehicle speed calculation will be based off of different tire and wheel combinations. Gary, thank you for the answer on that. That's 100% accurate. Matthew put in any suggestions for how to bring awareness to the calibration needed after hail repair has been done by a PDR vendor. It's not typically something that the insurance is expecting when quoting the vehicle. Matthew, this is a tremendous uh, conversation piece I think at this particular point. I know several areas of the country have been battered by hail the last couple of months. I know St. Louis just got bombarded with hail. I was talking to a gentleman that lives there. They had 160-mile-an-hour winds that was pushing the hail sideways. So vehicles were getting damaged on areas that they don't typically get damaged on hail for, usually you see it on hoods, on the roof of the vehicle, headlights, but this was actually pushing the vehicle side or the hail sideways into the vehicle. So um, there are a lot of considerations when it comes to ADAS and hail damage. One an example that I think of often is on Subarus with stereo or mono camera view behind the rear view mirror. And if you're doing hail repair on the top of the car or on the roof of the car, you've got to lower that headliner. You've got to get in and around that camera. When you put that headliner back in, there more than likely should be a good chance or good opportunity there to calibrate that just to make sure it is pointing in the right direction. So um, I think for me personally, I think this is something that we should explore. Matthew, if you want to be part of a webinar at some point, I'd love to have you on and let's talk about that. Let's brainstorm. Let's think of some ways to ideate on where PDR vendors and PDR companies should be thinking about working with somebody who's doing calibrations to help offset the fact that they may be moving certain ADAS functionality or triggering certain calibrations from happening. So Matthew, let's chat on that. All right, let's see. Lots of great questions and comments in here. See if I see anything else that's maybe of interest for us to. So going back to the Opus State Farm, David put in here that from what he has seen, it was only Opus State Farm approved. Not sure how this is allowed, but if you know more, please do share. Again, I think there's been some comments on the community. I know somebody posted something yesterday that they had talked specifically with an adjuster from State Farm and provided some additional insight on that. Again, myself and the team here at Rev, we're learning something new on just about a daily and weekly basis as far as like what's going on with that. Um, Michael put in here also that State Farm is also using Elite Tech and Pro Tech in the Pacific Northwest. That is correct. I believe that if you go to Opus's website, they do have a vendor list of approved sublet vendors that can perform those calibrations. I don't know all the specifics. Again, I think you can either apply to be part of that approved vendor list. I'm not exactly how they're approving those vendors or who they're working with directly, but again, I've got some contacts there if anybody wants some additional information. I think, let's see, what else? Question is, insurance company paid to calibrate a front radar when R&I'd. Position statement states that the front windshield needs to be calibrated. How true is that? Um, Insurance company paid to calibrate front radar when R&I'd. Position statement says that front windshield needs to be calibrated. How true is that? CP, if the position statement is indicating from the OEM that the front windshield also needs to be calibrated, but the insurance company is reluctant to pay for that, I think that's worth a conversation with that insurance company on educating them on why it needs to be done. Again, referencing the position statement information. If ultimately they denied paying for that, my overarching answer to anything like that, if it's required, and you have the equipment to do the calibration, I don't like eating a cost as much as anybody else, but if it's the right thing to do to just do the calibration to ensure vehicle safety, that's always my overarching sentiment is just go ahead, do the calibration. And again, coming from where I came from at Precision Diagnostics, that was something that we steadfastly believed is that if it needs to be done, and even if the insurance company doesn't want to pay for it, it's probably something we should do, right? Just good for business. Let's see. Casey put in here, Honda windshield camera and radar can be done dynamically, but together OEM doesn't require with glass replacement to do radar only for the windshield camera. Casey, that's great knowledge. I do appreciate that. Question, does Rev reference OEM service information for calibration requirements on the report, or do they only reference aftermarket such as ALLDATA? Alexis, this is a great question. So ALLDATA, understand how ALLDATA works. They are an aggregator of OEM information. The reason like an ALLDATA, sorry, my Alexa just went off. ALLDATA aggregates the information from just about every OEM so that for users, you've got essentially one login and then can reference OEM repair procedures and information using ALLDATA. So Rev does reference OEM service information. Generally, the links that a Rev report will provide go out to ALLDATA for procedures on how to complete the calibration, but then also validating why it needs to be done, so documentation. And again, that information generally in ALLDATA is coming directly from the OEM specifically. So great question. If you've got access directly to OEM information or OEM subscriptions, you can certainly use that, but ALLDATA is a terrific resource as well for validating that information. Question here is when when we notice the Rev report is inaccurate and send to tech support for correction, why is the issue never fixed? Michael Brockway, that's a great question. Happy to answer that offline. We are doubling down on our ADAS team in terms of continuing to work on validating and accurate reports we know are really paramount to how the Rev platform works. But again, you and I can talk offline on that. Happy to talk about that. So. All right. Any other questions coming through? I see a lot of comments coming through. I'll let those keep going through. We'll go ahead and get wrapped up here. So again, really in summary for what we learned about today, Importance of proper ADAS calibrations. It's critical to vehicle safety, goes without saying. Best practices for successful ADAS calibrations, and really we focused on, really things of what we shouldn't be doing, and then obviously for things that we should be doing. We will get that pre-calibration checklist out to everybody that requested it. We'll also post that out in the community. Appreciate everybody's input on that as well, as far as the interest in that. Common pitfalls to avoid. Again, things to think about. Again, if you have any questions on things like that, feel free to reach out to folks on the community. I know a lot of folks like to help out with those questions. Or if you've got something specific to me, feel free to reach out. And again, next month, we will be talking about enhancing shop efficiencies, like how to integrate ADAS into your workflow. So whether you're doing in-house calibrations now, you're looking at bringing equipment in, you're working with a sublet partner, you're looking to kind of double down on what that relationship currently looks like. We'll be talking about that. In July, we're going to be doing a co-hosted webinar with some folks from iCar. In August, we're going to be looking at, there's a mountain of data that's in the ADAS world. So we're going to be looking at that, how to unlock insights for safer repairs. And then in September, we're going to be doing a partner webinar with the ASA, talking about system failures for diagnostics, repairs, and customer education. So, and real quick, a little bit about Rev. So sounds like a lot of you do use Rev. We do appreciate it. If you have any questions on it, how can we make it better? How can we enhance it? Encourage you to reach out to me or anybody on the Rev team. If you're not familiar with Rev and want to learn a little bit more about it, feel free to scan that QR code, or you can go to revhq.com and learn more about what Rev can do to help with ADAS identification and everything that goes along with that. So, all right, that wraps up or concludes our webinar for today. I'm going to take a look back here really quick to see if there's any other additional questions. Question is, sorry if this is asked, but what is the best way to let body shops know how important this is in terms of doing ADAS calibrations? I assume we have a lot in our area that just don't do it. That's a terrific question. I think there's been comments and posts out in the community regarding this specific topic. So I encourage you to go out to the community and you can search for how to work with more body shops. I can tell you from my experience, I used to go out and work with shops when I was at Precision Diagnostics, and you're right. A lot of shops just no lights, no codes, no problems, no calibrations. Well, that's not necessarily the case. We do work with a lot of our customers here at Rev on ways to think about like helping them grow their business. So if that's something we can help, feel free to reach out to me as well on that. And anything we can do to help in that regard, please let us know. Other than that, I think we're all done for the day. I appreciate everybody's time. I know it's really important, and we want to make sure we provide a lot of value. So any feedback, any questions, any comments, feel free to reach out to me directly, joel@revados.com, or you can find me out in the community. Feel free to shoot me a message. And again, hopefully this was helpful. And again, enjoy the rest of your days, and appreciate everybody being part of the call today. Thank you.